It was a bright Saturday morning, the kind of day made for peace and coffee. I was sitting in my backyard, enjoying the quiet hum of birds, when the sharp sound of heels clicked on the pavement. I didn't even have to look up to know who it was. Karen, our self-proclaimed HOA queen. "Excuse me," she shouted, her voice cutting through the morning air like a car alarm. "This fence of yours violates HOA standards." I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about, Karen?" "This fence has been here for 3 years." She marched closer, clutching her clipboard like a sword. "According to the updated guidelines, fences must be exactly 3 feet from the curb. Yours is over by at least 2 inches. I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, my fence isn't even near the curb. It's inside my backyard." She frowned, flipping her papers dramatically. "Rules are rules. You'll need to move it back immediately or face a fine." I sighed. This wasn't the first time she'd pulled something like this. Last month, she'd made old Mr. Jenkins repaint his porch because the color clashed with the neighborhood tone. She loved control, and the HOA was her playground. Later that evening, I decided to check the HOA bylaws myself. No surprise, there were no new rules about fences. Karen had made the whole thing up. Even worse, she'd been using fake letters with the HOA logo to scare neighbors into obeying her demands. The next morning, she showed up again, smug as ever, waving a notice in my face. "Here, official HOA order. Move the fence within 72 hours. I looked at the paper, then at her. "Funny thing, Karen, I'm actually on the HOA board, and I never approved this." Her smile froze. "Well, I'm just enforcing the neighborhood standards." "Right," I said, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "You know, Karen, maybe you're right. Maybe I should move the fence." She perked up, thinking she'd won. "Good, I'm glad we're in agreement." But inside, I was already hatching a plan. If she wanted me to move it so badly, then I'd move it, but not the way she expected. I'd move it somewhere she'd never forget. That morning marked the beginning of the end for Karen's reign over the neighborhood, and I was going to enjoy every single moment of it. After that morning, I decided to stop reacting and start planning. I spent the next few days gathering every document I could find. Property maps, city records, HOA bylaws. I wanted to be 100% sure before I made my next move. What I found made me grin like a kid at Christmas. According to the official city survey, Karen's driveway extended 6 inches into my property line. 6 glorious inches. The irony was too perfect. For years, she'd been barking orders at everyone about rules and boundaries, and now she was the one breaking them. The next morning, I paid a visit to the zoning office. The city inspector looked through my papers and nodded. "Yep, she's encroaching on your land. Technically, you can fence off your property any way you like, as long as it stays within the line." I asked just to be sure, "Even if it blocks her driveway?" He smiled. "If it's your property, that's your right." That was all I needed to hear. By Saturday, my plan was ready. Karen usually left for yoga around 9, so at 8 sharp, I called my buddy Steve over. We took down my old fence and started moving it, exactly 6 inches forward, right onto her driveway. When we finished, it looked glorious, straight, solid, and perfectly legal. The new fence sliced her driveway in half like a knife through butter. At 10:30, her SUV rolled up. She stopped dead in the street, jaw dropping. "What is this?" she screeched. I leaned against the fence, pretending to be casual. "Morning, Karen. You told me to move it according to HOA regulations. I just followed your advice." Her face turned red. "You can't do this. You're blocking my property." "Actually," I said, handing her the survey papers, "this part of your driveway isn't your property." "It's mine." City confirmed it. She snatched the papers and scanned them, her hands trembling. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting." "Go ahead," I said, grinning. "Make sure to bring the bylaws." She stormed off, mumbling threats under her breath. By the time evening rolled around, half the neighborhood had already come to admire my new fence. Steve even nicknamed it the Line of Justice. For once, Karen's power trip had hit a wall, literally. But I knew her well enough to realize she wouldn't stop here. She'd try to fight back. And I was ready for round 2. It didn't take long for Karen to strike back. The very next evening, I got an email from the HOA about an emergency meeting regarding unauthorized fence modifications. I almost laughed when I saw who signed it, Karen, of course. The meeting was held at the community center. By the time I walked in, half the neighborhood had already gathered, whispering and smirking. Everyone knew what this was about. Karen stood at the front like a queen addressing her subjects. "This man," she announced, pointing dramatically at me, "has violated HOA regulations by moving his fence onto my property. He is obstructing access to my driveway and disrupting the neighborhood's harmony." I raised my hand calmly. "Mind if I speak?" She folded her arms. "Go ahead, but make it quick." I stepped forward and set a folder on the table. "Here are the city survey records, property maps, and the official letter from the zoning department. The fence sits exactly on my property line. Not an inch over." The room went quiet. The HOA vice president leaned over the papers and nodded. "He's right, Karen. The fence is perfectly legal." Karen's face turned pale. "That can't be. The HOA rules." "There are no such rules," the lawyer interrupted gently. We checked. None of the bylaws mention fences within private property boundaries. You could almost hear her ego deflate, but she wasn't ready to give up. "He's doing this out of spite," she yelled. "He's harassing me." I smiled slightly. "I'm just following your suggestion. Karen, you told me to move it according to HOA standards, so I did." The neighbors chuckled. A few even clapped softly. Then Mr. Jenkins stood up. "Karen, you made me repaint my porch twice. Said it didn't fit the aesthetic. We're tired of your nonsense." One by one, other residents joined in. Stories of fines, letters, fake rules. The vice president finally turned to Karen and said, "Your behavior has gone too far. Until further notice, you're suspended from all HOA activities." Karen looked around the room, eyes wide. "You can't do this to me. I am the HOA." "Not anymore," someone muttered. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. That night I watched from my porch. As she tried to park her SUV, she couldn't even reach her garage because of the new fence. She sat there for a long time, fuming behind the wheel, and I couldn't help but smile. Round 3 was coming, and I was ready. 2 weeks passed without a single word from Karen. The neighborhood was quieter, almost peaceful. People walked their dogs without fear of being reported. Kids played on the sidewalks, and for once, the HOA group chat wasn't filled with her constant messages about violations. But I knew Karen too well. Peace and Karen didn't mix. Sure enough, one Tuesday morning, a white city truck pulled up in front of my house. Out stepped a building inspector holding a clipboard. "Mr. Davis, we received a complaint about your fence blocking public access." I grinned. "Let me guess, Karen?" He chuckled under his breath. "I can't say who filed it, but I've seen this type of thing before." He spent about 20 minutes walking the perimeter, checking the measurements and jotting notes. Finally, he looked up and said, "This fence is perfectly fine. You're completely within your rights." Then he walked over to Karen's side and frowned. However, her driveway extends about 6 inches past her property line. Karen appeared from behind her blinds like she'd been waiting for her cue. "So, what does that mean?" she asked, crossing her arms. "It means," he said slowly, "you've been encroaching on your neighbor's land. You'll need to correct that within 30 days or face a fine." Her jaw dropped. "That's absurd. He's doing this to get back at me." The inspector shrugged. "I'm just enforcing the rules, ma'am." I nearly laughed. The same words she'd thrown at me came back to haunt her. "Rules are rules, right, Karen?" I said, unable to resist. For the next week, her driveway became a construction zone. Workers showed up with jackhammers, tearing apart the concrete to move it back within her boundary. The noise echoed through the neighborhood, and people couldn't help but smirk each time they passed. When it was finally done, half her driveway was gone, and my fence stood proudly right where it belonged. At the next HOA meeting, Karen didn't show up. The board voted in a new president, someone who actually cared about keeping the peace instead of waging war. From then on, life in the neighborhood felt different. No surprise inspections, no fake letters, no Karen drama. Sometimes I'd see her walking to her car parked on the street, glaring at my fence like it had personally betrayed her. I'd just raise my coffee mug and smile. Because in the end, I didn't just win an argument. I reclaimed my peace. And that fence? It still stands tall, strong, legal, and absolutely glorious. A few months had passed since the driveway fiasco, and peace had finally settled over the neighborhood. The new HOA president, Lisa, was calm, friendly, and best of all, nothing like Karen. People started hosting barbecues again. Lawns looked cheerful instead of uniform, and for the first time, the place actually felt like a community. But Karen? She was still around. Bitter, quiet, and simmering with resentment. She avoided everyone, though every now and then, I'd catch her peeking from behind her curtains, glaring at my fence like it had personally ruined her life. Then came the annual neighborhood open house, a big HOA event. Lisa organized to show off our community to potential buyers. There'd be food stalls, music, and an awards ceremony for best, yard, and most beautiful. Property! Everyone was excited, except Karen. The morning of the event, I was setting up chairs when I saw her sneaking around with a clipboard. She looked determined. I knew that look. It was her rule enforcement face. A few hours later, as the judges began their round, Karen marched up to Lisa. "Excuse me, there's a violation here," she barked, pointing toward my house. Lisa frowned. "What kind of violation?" Karen held up a photo she'd taken. "His fence is still too close to my driveway. That's not aesthetically aligned with the neighborhood." People around us started whispering. One of the judges stepped forward. "Ma'am, this fence was reviewed and approved by the city months ago." Karen's face twitched. Well, it's ugly. It ruins the harmony." Lisa smiled politely. "Karen, we're here to celebrate the neighborhood, not criticize it." But Karen wasn't done. She turned toward the crowd, desperate to reclaim her power. "You all don't understand. This man, he's a menace. And that's when it happened. Her heel caught on the small decorative stone border she'd installed herself. She stumbled, flailed, and fell backward, right into the table stacked with pies from the bake sale. The crowd gasped, then burst into laughter. Karen sat up, covered in blueberry filling, her perfect hair dripping purple. Someone tried to help her up, but she swatted them away, muttering, "I'm fine." Lisa kept her composure. Let's all give Karen a round of applause for making today unforgettable. The laughter that followed could be heard across the block. From that day on, Karen disappeared from every HOA event. She still lived there, sure, but she never said another word about my fence. And every time I walk past her driveway, I still see a faint blueberry stain on the pavement, my favorite reminder that karma always finds its target.